So that's the company I'm working for, so it's codecentric. And I want to talk about something which make a lot of people react in a harsh way to me, because I did an interview with Bill some weeks ago, and there were some people really pissed off because I talked about Post-OpenAPI. But to be honest, there is more. You showed OpenAPI, but there is more. But it will not be covered by TypeSpec, but there is still more. So what I do at codecentric, it's totally easy. I'm the head of API consulting. We bring our customers on the fast lane. That's the easiest way what we're doing there. We do a lot of stuff. When you search on the internet, search on LinkedIn, you will find a colleague of mine, Miriam, and we both are the lead persons in this whole concept of codecentric, and it's bringing software engineering back to the API space. Nothing more. And that's why we have this agenda. We have to shift from OpenAPI, because it's one standard. But there will be more. And there will be something that we don't really know about. Yesterday, a good friend of mine, Andrew Q, pointed something at me saying, oh, there will be a new API coming up, the real-time API. Maybe you have a look on the internet and find out what a real-time API will be. It's nothing new, to be honest. And here's the same. And we find something out into doing something Canvas stuff. And we will look at the role of API development, and we have a little link into TypeSpec. I will not show code, because normally I'm working with enterprise architects. For them, that's magic. So only the solution people do that, and it's more about how to bring the stuff into an organization when you have bigger enterprises with more than 1,500 developers or something like that. Because this is really interesting to do that. So the shift beyond OpenAPI, it's totally easy. We need to have flexibility in API design. It's nice to know that there are specifications out there and that there's a lot of tooling out there. But in the end, both before me said it also already, it's a YAML file. So it's static text. Sorry, it's nothing more. So I need a lot of tooling to do things, but I need actually to understand what people want to do, I need flexibility. Not so possible. And I want to do it more collaboratively and more module. So not having a big specification and then doing stuff with references. And hopefully everybody understands how our references work and so on. And the third thing is, I need more developer-centric tools. I don't need a gateway to do OpenAPI or any other specification, sorry to say. Because this is something which always comes up. Oh, we need to buy a gateway. We need to buy that. We need to have that. No, just think about what do your developers need to provide APIs. That's the easiest step there. To start with, it's actually easy. We have to be clear that business goals are going into the real of the developing side. So really have to go there and say, okay, the business has these goals and they should be reached by the developers. There's something we need there. Mariuka, she's in the API space for many, many years, have her own API ops cycles. And there's this nice API value proposition canvas. In these days, everybody loves canvases because they're easy to understand, because we are talking with the business. We are not talking with developers all the time. So when we build APIs, there is a business need. And they don't want to have code lines or even a YAML file. They will not understand. And they will not also understand Swagger UI. Because this is something we see a lot at customers. Yeah, we have the Swagger UI here. You can read what we deliver. No, that's not working. So we need something totally different. we need to have this business perspective somewhere, and we need also to have the developer's perspective. And the good thing about this canvas, or this value proposition canvas, there are a lot. When you search on the API space and you're looking for API products, you will find a lot of them, because it's nothing really new. In this case, we are working on to get an API product and service market fit. So as the providers, we are looking to really build features to enable the gains, and we want to relieve the pains on the other side. So if somebody has a problem with authentication and authorization, that's a pain point. We have to tackle this from the provider side. And this is really good to have a look at it. And also really good to start with the tasks. What is somebody doing or wants somebody to do with the API? Maybe it's not an API. Shh. That could also happen. Because what we see at big companies is, enterprises we work with, everybody wants to do an API. But maybe it's something different. And maybe it's not something with REST. And that's why we have these challenges with OpenAPI. And when we want to drive really innovation in the space, it's getting more and more complicated. Because OpenAPI focuses on REST. Yeah, we can build webhooks, that's fine. But it is focusing on REST. And REST is an architectural standard. There's this nice dissertation out there in the space. Who of you ever read this one? Expected. For the others, please read it to understand what REST was built for, or what was the idea of REST. It's really important to understand what you're doing out there in the field, because it doesn't bring joy when you want to do event-driven stuff or gRPC-based stuff. It's always there. And the business doesn't really understand technology. But sometimes we have these new business people, citizen developers. They're my biggest friends in companies like the bigger enterprises, because they want to do APIs with Excel, which is possible, because you already have a formula in Excel to use APIs, and normally they use REST. The next thing is that the OpenAPI specification is quite verbose, actually. So it's challenging to really maintain stuff. Chris already talked about it. It's a big bunch of text. And I have to do several things to really understand. And I'm not talking about these tutorials with 60 lines or something like that, more the space Caitlin was looking at. So having 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 lines, and finding people that really understand what that API does. Because it's normally not really possible, even with complex data structures there. And that's really hard for some people, maybe. OpenAPI is there for design-first approaches, but it's not built for collaboration. You can do stuff in regards of having branches or something like that, but it's a text file. Sorry. If somebody drops it out, puts it somewhere else, and does things on their own because it's available to be downloaded or something like that, it's hard to really have this collaborative API design process. And that's my loved topic. Client generation. There are these generators out there, but they don't really cover the whole specification. They're not working quite well. They're doing stuff which is maybe not intended, it's not working quite well. And you have always these documentation pitfalls, because normally what people do when they talk about documentation in the OpenAPI space, here is my description. You can read it. That's not documentation. documentation means a lot more. Now we have something like a RASO coming up. That's doubling the documentation, hopefully, when people understand how to document workflows there. But in the end, it's not really having a documentation. It's just having a file. And when we look at big companies, when we look at the economy, there's not always this resource hypermedia type of thing, which is then REST. That's actually a slide we always use at Codecentric to talk with people about API interaction patterns. Because we learned over the years that we don't have to talk in technology. You will see what I mean by that now. When we talk with people, and even with the business side about a tunnel, a query, or something event-based, it's sometimes more obvious what is meant by that, or having a resource. Because normally when people come to us with customers who work with, we see this. Oh, we can deliver an HTTP REST interface. We can use gRPC. It's totally interesting for the business side to know what gRPC is, because they normally don't really know. And even the developers don't know, because it's something which is actually there over the years, but nobody's really using it. But it might be more worthwhile to having gRPC than REST. Then we normally find something like GraphQL. And that's funny with business people, because they read news. And GraphQL is always in a combination with Facebook. Oh, we will become Facebook. Oh, we can find everyone. Oh, that's fine. That's cool. The idea was, I want to query something. When you're working in the SAP space, you can use OData for this. Yeah? Sometimes it's just having a combination. You have to hide something from others, because these business people are not really business people. They are normally citizen developers when they're working in an enterprise that is having a supply chain or anything like that. They have some technical knowledge that is there. And giving them this, it makes it nonsense. Because they don't understand the difference between saying I want to query something and to have GraphQL. Because GraphQL, we learned it yesterday. I wasn't there, but I saw it on LinkedIn. It's the next big mess thing in security that's coming up. It's the same with Kafka. When somebody talks about events, for me it's totally fine. I'm thinking about cloud events or anything else that is really available in the market to describe things. But normally we see Kafka. And what we see in the market is, or with customers, replication of tables. That had nothing to do really with events, because a replication of a table is data integration. That's not something I would like to use in a Kafka context. It's there because it's easy to do. And that's really funny. That's why we say, okay, we just talk about these interaction patterns and leave everything behind. The good thing is, when we now look at the role of API development, when we talk with people a lot, in the management mostly, they think it's just writing code and documentation of endpoints. But in the end, it's really about finding solutions for business problems, because somebody wants to connect something else, or maybe share data with others in the market, so to become an economy. It's nothing to just write code and document endpoints, because this is something we did in the integration space 10 to 20 years ago. And when we look at some of the key concepts there, it's really that API development is a problem solver. So it's really not about to say, okay, we're just writing the specifications and provide glue between systems. Yeah, that's the really old view. In the nowadays, we really can think about having understanding of a bigger picture. Because when somebody wants to use interfaces, it should be clear for everyone that we talk about integration. no space on that. But it's really about more. It's about alignment to business goals and so on and so on. And really not just exposing data. It's the same with collaboration. Normally, it was isolation, so everybody was doing the things on their own. Now we have to talk. And the third thing is really about efficiency and the right tools. Because something like TypeSpec is there is because somebody wants to be more efficient. We learned it because I don't have to read through 60 lines, I have just 20 or 30. So there's some cognitive load change. And it's really about to automate repetitive tasks in the end and to really ensure that there's consistency over there. And that's something where a tool or framework like TypeSpec, for example, steps in, nothing more. It will not replace OpenAPI, because this was one of the things somebody pointed at me that I was saying that and I didn't. It's an additional thing that will be there in the past, because not everybody is really aware of these specifications because they are so hard to understand. Even if we get something new like Moonwalk or something else coming up, it's really hard to understand standards for the normal software developer because it's not the daily task actually. So the main points are really to building on standards foundation. So there are standards in our development world, and we really have to be aware that there be some kind of layer in between to make it us things easier to work. In the end, it's about modularization again, and the design process has to be developer-centric because we are still developers in the field. There are no designers or API developers or whatever the people are called. It's really about developing stuff. So what we have to do, it's quite easy. We have to move the canvas to the design. So really understand core business objectives by using this canvas you saw earlier, and then identify specific requirements and interaction patterns needed to support those business objects. And then use TypeSpec to generate the appropriate interaction patterns based on the design. So it's really a step. What here is not actually visible, it's about automation. Nobody has to do this. Because I can come from a canvas by just having the API described in normal language. I don't need a specification, I don't need specific tooling, but what I maybe need is some kind of translation, transformation, whatever. The value for both sides is quite easy. APIs designed with TypeSpec are maybe faster in time to market, easier to maintain, and maybe more easy to adapt in the future, because there's not this type of YAML stuff to be seen. For the developer side, it's also easy, because we said it quite often today, it's about reducing cognitive load. In times of platform engineering, we learned it today again, it's one of the most important tasks to really bring people to that point. And in the end, it's about when we want to do such stuff in regards of API design, it's really about to think about efficiency through simplification, to make things easy to understand, to really build something up, because we always relying on things. When we talk about authentication, there shouldn't be several descriptions how to authenticate stuff. There should be one, and that should be used. And we need to have flexibility in API interaction patterns. This is something which is coming up. I saw that on the GitHub repository, looking more in GraphQL, really having a look how to maintain the stuff into gRPC and so on and so on. The event side is something different. There is something maybe to look after actually, because there's always JSON schema available. And in the end, it's about sustainability and to really evolve and be part of this community, because I see there's a lot of effort to do, and it helps us to really bring up this whole topic. So, free learning things, it's quite easy. Efficiency first, that's the only thing. Not API first, not API design first, it's efficiency first. Then business has to meet the development, and maybe for some people, not every API needs to be REST. And in the end, something like TypeSpec is the tool that brings developer efficiency and the business value together. That's all from my side, and I'm really looking forward for the Q&A we have now. Thank you.